Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the January 30 meeting of the Chatham Finance Committee. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29, 23 signing of the Acts of 23 extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, this meeting of the Chatham Finance Committee is being conducted via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder, persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling 508-945-4410 and enter the code 698-918-859. Again, 508-945-4410, conference ID 698-918-859, hashtag. Or one may join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. Despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access, and we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website ASAP. In accordance with town policy, the public can speak to any issue or business item on the agenda during the meeting when recognized by me, the chair. So with that, a roll call. Tommy Doan? Here. Barbara?
Here.
John Papalardo is absent, I know. Joanne Sprague? Here. Andy Young?
Here.
Kristen Andres?
Here.
Tracy Shields?
Here.
And I am here. All right. Nice to see everybody again. Hope you had a nice Thanksgiving and Christmas, and it's time to get back to work. But before we do so, with our budget presentation, I am going to introduce our new Director of Finance, Carrie Mazeral. Carrie joins us from Duxbury, where she served as the town accountant, since 2019. In Duxbury, Carrie had carriage of the town's accounting and financial systems, including budgeting using our beloved ClearGov digital budget book, maintenance of revenue records, and maintenance and control of expenditure and financial records pertaining to town appropriations and payroll functions. Prior to working in Duxbury, Carrie started her municipal accounting career, working as a payroll specialist for the town of Sandwich. She was elevated to the assistant town accountant in Sandwich in 2016. Carrie has a Bachelor of Science in Business Studies in Accounting. I think that's correct. Mm-hmm. A certificate in local government leadership and management, and she's a certified governmental accountant and has a certificate in Massachusetts procurement. On the personal side, Carrie grew up in Marion, has lived on the Cape with her husband and 2 kids for the past 18 years. And importantly, she has 2 dogs. So with that, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So glad you were able to join us. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you, you too.
So we are going to tuck into this year's budget presentation. So without further ado, we will turn it over to the town manager and our new finance director.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I love this time of year, so it's very exciting to come before you. So yay, budget planning. Another thing about Carrie is that in Duxbury, they also had a AAA bond rating. So she understands the importance and the hard work it takes to continue that and the pitfall if it were to be somehow declined. So again, our top priority is to maintain our S&P AAA bond rating, which is the highest bond rating for municipalities. But for FY25, as we begin the budget review, I'm not sure if any of you saw the select board meeting last week. Carrie and I presented the budget. And in our presentation to you, happy to get into many more details and certainly answer any questions. But I'm going to start it similar to how I started it last week, and it's about as we embark on the fiscal year 2025 budget journey, we are proud to present an all-encompassing budget to chart Chatham's future. It's designed to address current challenges and pave the way for lasting community investment. A successful budget review also involves evaluating programs, engaging the public, and setting goals to benefit all citizens. And that's something that we do on an internal level with the department heads and department staff, and more recently with the select board just last Saturday when they adopt their 2025 fiscal year and calendar year 2024 goals and objectives. So despite some ongoing hurdles, such as supply chain limitations, utility costs, and inflation, we continue to adapt our operations to ensure a seamless delivery of service. Using data, historical trends, conservative budgets, and assumptions, the FY25 budget adheres to a level services approach reflecting a commitment to fiscal prudence while funding and programs and services to serve the entire community. Did that change? Yep. Okay. So in your budget book, as well as the transmittal package, which was the transmittal letter and the budget summary, I just wanted to note some of the components of that. So with the State of a Town presentation, we like to look back over our last fiscal year, our last calendar year, which is 2023, to highlight some of the achievements that have occurred even in the calendar year, or actually since town meeting adopted our last budget. We also note community connections and initiatives, including social infrastructure, an economic conditions summary, building activity, the FY25 budget detail with revenues and expenditure explanations, a wage and salary overview, education budget details that are at this time proposed. They haven't gone through the complete vetting process with the various school committees, and looking at a capital program, including water. There's also a status report in the transmittal letter that's also in the digital budget book that gives an update on our ongoing wastewater project efforts, our renewable energy, climate change, and coastal resiliency efforts, and technology and online offerings, including emergency management and generators. So the budget should reflect priorities, and we feel that the FY25 operating and capital budgets provide for a strategic budgeting of such, and also redirects and enhances staffing resources to achieve the goal of a resilient and sustainable community for the future. So the components for a State of a Town update that we usually give you, we note our property values remain high. Our fiscal year 24 tax rate is $3.57, down from $3.88 as certified in FY23. Our municipal bond rating of AAA by S&P Global was recently affirmed in May of 2023. Our reserves are stable. We have a successful other post-employment benefits OPEB strategy, funding strategy, for which the chair of the Finance Committee also serves on the trust. And our budget and financial policies we typically review at the budget summits, and also in response to any questions that FinCom may have on looking back at the 2018 fiscal policies. So it's a look back and also look forward for our multi-year forecasts. So this all looks pretty familiar to you, maybe for Carrie in her other world, but I just wanted to remind FinCom and the public where we've come from. So the FY 2021 budget, that was right in the heart of COVID. We named it Budgeting the Unknown. We did a quick pivot from a growth budget to a very restrictive stabilization type, or stabilizing budget, not stabilization, no use of stabilization funds for budgeting the unknown. And that strategy worked. And then for FY22, we did a COVID core services budget, really not much expansion, just making sure that the funding priorities reflected a commitment to the community needs at that time. And then we started to enhance in what we called somewhat of a growth budget for FY23, which we called it Budgeting for a Resilient and Sustainable Future. And then FY24, the budget that we're currently in that was approved at the annual town meeting in 2023 was a strategic budgeting for the future, where we did request and were approved additional staffing to provide the same level of services. And then for this budget, we call it an all-encompassing budget to chart Chatham's future. This is more of a back to the future type of budget that we're putting forward. So we took a lot of time to look back at available funds and making sure that there would not be any impact to the tax rate. And so we called it sort of a stabilizing budget, in that we're not looking at this point to have any additional staff, but also looking to provide the best services to all of our residents. And I'll turn it over to Carrie for the details.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Joe. Town's budgetary components. I'd like to mention there has been some updates to your printed versions of your books. Because at this time, it's just a preliminary budget, so we have had a few updates, and I've updated them online. So all of the updates will be either available online, or I can give you a new handout if you need it, but they're all available there. As I mentioned in the, oh, sorry, it's not me, but as mentioned in the Budget Summit in October, every year we begin with available sources of funds, revenue, which includes the tax levy, local receipts, and other available funds. Expenses begin with the department heads requesting funds to support a level service budget. As we look through the budget, the process is to have a balanced budget with revenues and expenses. As you all know, we use ClearGov as our budget module, and you guys have a book from the digital budget book. Digital budget book includes budget narratives, budget statements, prior year accomplishments, organizational charts, staffing history, and the 2025 capital improvement plan. You can locate the digital budget book on Budget Central on the town's website, included on this slide. It's down here. So this year, we're going to be using the digital budget book as our tool for presenting our budgets. So actually, I'm going to give you an overview of that, so I can take you guys through the digital budget book. You're going to go to the Town of Chatham website. Is that showing up on there?
No. Breeze, can you see if we can get it up?
Are they watching?
Yeah, I see the icon, someone just needs to grab it with a cursor.
Right
There you
here?
go.
Oh, they got it.
All right, well, we always plan for technical difficulties.
Oh, they're moving something.
There we go.
No. I'm not sure. All right, so let me see if I can do it from here. All right, so you're going to go to the Town of Chatham website, and you're going to go under Departments, and you're going to go to the Finance Department. And then you're going to scroll down to where this says Budget Central. And here is the digital budget book right here. So this is the exact same stuff that you got printed. We have the introduction right here of the digital budget book. It's on the first tab. History of the town. There's demographics. Basis of budgeting. Financial policies. I don't know if there's anything loaded in there. Yeah, okay. So financial policies are actually on here, so that's good. The transmittal letter that Jill and I had worked on is in here as well. So that includes everything that you received in your packet. Fund summaries. So this is where this kind of just goes an overview of the general fund. And it shows prior history, 21, 22, 23, 24, and our current budget that we're working on, 2025. And then you also have the water fund under here as well. So under here are all the departments. So this is where we're going to be working on. I'll show you, there's an example of my department, which is under accounting. So there's kind of a statement about what the accounting division does, and then we have a statement for our FY25 budget. how many employees, full-time staff that we have currently. Our prior calendar year accomplishments will be in here. And so this is the proposed budget for 2025. And as you scroll through, you'll scroll down. You can make these graphs into different graphs if you want. Down here where it says spreadsheet breakdown, I'm going to click on that. And this is going to give you 21 actuals, 22 actuals, 23 actuals, what we adopted for 2024. And then what our proposed budget is for 2025. And then over here, we'll have notes, and we'll put notes in there for each thing. I mean, not every single thing will have notes, but a lot of them will, especially for if there's like a significant increase to something. There's also an organizational chart, and then our staffing salaries for 2025 will be included in here.
So Carrie or Jill, two questions.
Yeah.
Certainly for my benefit, perhaps for the committees and the communities. First is, how dynamic is that electronic document? Is that something we should be looking for changes in every week,
I don't
every
think,
couple of weeks?
honestly, I don't think there's going to be too many changes to a lot of things. I mean, the only things that we're currently waiting on are like the school budgets.
Right, of course.
Health insurance, Barnstable County retirement. I think those are kind of like the big ones that we're waiting for.
Okay.
So everything else
But you
is,
think the departmental budgets and headcounts and all that are all pretty well bedded down?
oh, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, and if there's any changes too, because we're meeting twice a week, we can either give you a handout or note that specifically. The budget book, we were just talking about this last night, we noticed that it didn't include the FY '23 actuals. It just happened to be a hidden column in the book, but it's available here in the budget book that Carrie just showed you, as well as in the transmittal that we did as a hard copy, it did have the FY '23 actual. So again, we're doing sort of a hybrid where we're still having the traditional budget transmittal with summaries as you and many other members and the public are used to. And then the budget book will be a live document. So I think the plan will be that once the select board votes the budget to transmit it to FinCom, there will not be any other changes, and actually that might be a time if someone needs a new book printed out for them, we can certainly do that.
Okay. All right, that's helpful. Thank you. Joanne?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This information is wonderful. I listened to the selectmen's presentation too, and that was terrific. I think, as the Finance Committee, though, I think we should remember that the taxpayers don't all have the time to put into this as we do, or the access to the technical interpretations that hopefully we'll be able to by the time this is all over. So I want to remind all of us that our job is to make sure that the taxpayers, that we interpret for them, and so that they can understand what it is we're presenting and what we're trying to do, regardless of whether they have access to the computer information. So I don't want us to get so good at doing this digitally that we forget that not everybody has the time or the equipment, and we need to make sure that all of this information, we get to them in a way that they understand how their money's being used. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're also going to continue to have the departments come in to present the budgets as well, so you can ask more detailed questions. So none of that process has changed, but I understand with the digital platform, we want to be all inclusive, and so certainly appreciate your comments.
All right, back to you guys.
So on the last tab is the capital improvements, and this goes over the one-year plan. This is not the total amount that was submitted, but this is everything that has been, I think, approved for what was requested for everything. And this includes capital items from 10 to 250,000 and above. Okay.
And then presumably, there's been no change to the policy around greater than 5 years and greater than $250,000
No,
yielding a standalone warrant article.
right.
Yeah, and so you'll see that, some of those items included in the operating budget, and some of those that exceed the 250,000 will be presented as separate articles.
Great, thank you.
Yep, I'm trying to get this thing to go back onto, stop sharing, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, he's got it. All right, perfect.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so our 2025 balanced budget, an all-encompassing budget to chart Chatham's future. So this fiscal year, our budget directive reflects a commitment to fiscal prudence while funding programs and services to benefit the entire community. The foundation of the approach is built upon best financial practices and strategic principles, encompassing a vision that spans 4 to 10 years, a strategic direction for 2 years, and a tactical actions for the immediate future. Aligned with our commitment to priorities, the FY 2025 operating and capital budgets strategically allocate resources to achieve the objective of a resilience and sustainable community. At this time, the budget is funded with no increases to the tax levy. This may change depending upon priorities, articles brought forward to the ATM, annual town meeting. Yeah.
Joanne, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Before we go any further,
Yep.
when you're talking about beyond the operating budget, and we're talking about additional supplemental capital spending and articles, separate articles submitted, has that been considered in the 3.57 tax rate? Supposing all of those were accepted, approved? The supplemental capital articles.
Right, so, go ahead.
So the articles that we know are annual articles, like the child care voucher program.
Right.
It's not really capital, but it's an annual social infrastructure article. And as Carrie moves through the presentation, for this year, we have the full amount of dredging, which is $400,000 coming off of the tax rate. Because this year, with the free cash certification and the transfer at the special town meeting of those funds, so we have free cash, and we've traditionally had a pretty high balance, but once we established the wastewater capitalization stabilization fund, we transferred the Harwich intermunicipal agreement revenues into that account. So the free cash that's actually available for use to fund the capital program and other funds is that 2.367 million. So not all of the articles have been programmed into the tax rate because they haven't been discussed with the select board yet. But those that I expected to be annual articles, we did build that into the tax rate. So I don't think there's any impact for those items.
Right, and there's only a few right now.
Okay, so you don't have, do you have an idea right now of how it might affect the 3.57 tax rate if they were approved, the supplemental articles?
The additional ones, I don't have that information at this time.
I think it would be important for us to, even though they haven't been voted.
Yep.
Since they're proposed.
Yep.
It might be a good idea for us to have an accurate, not accurate, but a better idea of what we're dealing with.
Yep, absolutely, and I can most certainly get you that information.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
And you have it in one
And Carrie, that
Yep.
ties back into something you and I talked about last week, which was what is the product of a penny on the tax rate?
It's,
Last year's about $100,000. Each penny generated roughly $100,000 in
yep,
revenue.
and this year it's $116,000.
Perfect, thank you.
116099 to be exact.
Joanne, please.
I'm sorry, just one more thing.
It's okay.
Though we have supposedly a stable tax rate.
Yep.
The evaluation of taxpayers' property is certainly not stable, and we've had a percentage of increase in evaluation. So I think when we're talking about, and the Finance Committee is talking
Yep.
about what it costs the taxpayer, we need to think about not only that tax rate, but also how it converts into money when you're talking about the certainly increased evaluation of most all property too.
Yep.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So speaking of the tax levy is less to greater excess levy capacity. So if you compare last year's tax levy to this year's, it's actually less, as you look on the sheet. So it's, our excess levy capacity is actually 4.4 million more in FY '25 compared to FY '24 of 3.3. We are looking at increasing our local estimated receipts by 85% of actuals received in 2023. The overall budget without the education has increased 5.6%. There is a proposed increase of 9.43 in education, which I'll go over in another slide. We are estimating to receive $2.5 million in free cash this year to cover capital requests for FY '25, which is a decrease over the prior fiscal years, like Jill was just talking about. The other article placeholders, it's actually 1.5 million on the bottom down there. Right now, those are just placeholders, and they will need to be reviewed by the select board in the coming weeks. Our revenues for FY '25 budget includes 65% of our revenue from property taxes, also known as the tax levy. 17% of local receipts, which includes motor vehicle, excise tax, hotel motel revenues, meals tax, departmental fees. 12% of other available funds, which include the sale of lots, perpetual care, public education access funds, and waterway funds. State revenue, we are estimating to receive roughly $261,000, a slight increase. The governor's first round of estimates just came out last week, so that was actually updated. 6% is the water budget. So on this slide, as you can see, we are conservative with our estimates for our local receipts. You can see in FY '22, we had 10.9 million of actuals received. In 2023, we received 12.6. So our estimate for 2024 is 9.3, and our estimate for '25 is 10.7, which is based on the actuals from 2023.
Barbara, please.
Yep.
Carrie, why is the estimate for 2024 so much lower than the actual for 2023?
Well, it's supposed to be based on the 2022 actuals at 85%. I don't know if they did 85% or if they went less than 85% in 2024.
But the estimate for 25, is that 85%?
Yes,
And is that 85% of the actual of 23?
correct.
So the 24 is also an estimate based on 23?
No, it's an estimate based on the prior year, which is
22.
2022. Yep.
Do we have any idea at this point what that's going to turn up to? I mean, we certainly have some year-to-date figures on that, right?
On 2024 actuals, I can get you that information of what we've received so far.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
You're welcome. So this is just going over the other available funds that help support the budget, the operating budget, which includes waterways improvement. We have the Railroad Museum, PEG Access Funds, sale of lots and graves, and the Wetland Protection Fund. Some other offsets to the operating budget is the recreation revolving fund. They use that for programs, and then the shellfish revolving fund. There's Chapter 90 state aid that we receive. Those help pay for roads. Cape Cod and Islands Water Protection Fund, we use that to pay for debt service. And the waterways user fees, it's a bond project offset. So this is a graph showing our hotel, I call it hotel motel, but you guys call it hotel and short-term rental rooms, and then the meals tax. So this is just a graph showing, our increase to this. And I know there's some language out there to support 1% going, is it 1%? 1% going to, I think, the affordable housing, but that has not gone through yet.
Yeah, that's the redirection of 2%. So 1% goes to housing and 1% goes to the Chatham Elementary School. Still in the legislature.
Yep.
Andy, please.
One of the things I noted in that chart is that the rate of increase seems to be slowing down. Is there any indication what lies behind that?
I noticed that too, yeah. I think, I'm not really sure, but personally, I think it had something to, obviously it's lower, due to COVID and like maybe 2020, 2021. I don't know like what happened in 2018, I wasn't here. But you did increase your rate at some point around 2022, I believe, and that's where it's going up.
Yeah, and the state act to give us more revenues too for short-term rentals that took place in 2022.
So it's probably going to start stabilizing. But we'll have to keep an eye on it.
And obviously, I mean, that's really the point, is in trying to forecast the revenue.
Right.
Which way do you go with something like this? It's a significant amount of money. And, where do you end up with it? I understand the philosophy of forecasting no more than 85% of the previous years.
Yep.
But how that's going to work out for this budget, I don't know.
So we do look at years past as well to see if anything has increased, and if it hasn't, we usually keep that line as a stable line. We don't increase it because we're not going to be expecting more than what we've received the year before.
Tracy, please.
I think also, just in my own personal perspective and experience, that it's going to flatline somewhat because of just reaching capacity
Yeah.
for the restaurants and the hotels.
Yeah, yep.
There were times this summer we thought we had reached capacity,
I'm confident of that.
maybe over capacity.
Right. Barbara, please.
Although I'm sure there are plenty of tourists who would tell you that we've not reached capacity in terms of the charge of pricing and everything. I mean, that continues up regardless of capacity.
So this is just an overview of the 2025 preliminary budget. I actually updated the school budgets because last week I received some updates from the Cape Cod Tech School. But I haven't received any updates from the Monomoy School yet, so that still might change. So the operating budget is around 40 million. The school assessments are around 11 million. The water budget is 4.3. And the capital at 2.3. And this capital is, again, it's what is funded from free cash and other available funds.
Andy, please.
Are certainly some of the major budget drivers show up on page 11. That's the
Yeah.
education expense, municipal health group, governor's budget, debt service. The dates that are given here, are those still good, do we think?
What are the dates?
Yeah, I believe so. We had the dates for the school committee votes. So, and we haven't received the health insurance yet, so that the health insurance rate from our Cape Cod Municipal Health Group. So I think that there's nothing new's come in except we received the governor's, I think it's called a House 2 budget, and that was
House
for our House 1, our minimum amount of state aid going up.
Right, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. This is a breakdown of the percentages of the departments for FY 2025. This information is more in detail in your budget book and online. Um, 2025 factors. For 2025, the cost of living increase through our local economic performance formula is 3%. In FY 2024, salaries were adjusted based on work begun in 2019 through a grant called Classification Compensation Review from the Collins Center for non-public safety employees. Personnel policies, Chatham Municipal Employees Association, CMA, and Chatham Managers Association, CMA. The new schedule reflects market conditions for the town to remain competitive with the goal of retaining and recruiting professional employees to best serve the town of Chatham. The 2024 salaries listed below include the new implementation of this new salary schedule.
Joanne, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we're talking about the cost of living, and you're talking 3%,
Yes.
and which reminds me that from what I've read so far, the prediction of what the inflation factor for the country is 3.5%, and yet our budget is looking at 5.06%. Are we going to have a hard time explaining the difference?
So the salary increases, the annual increases, those are based on a formula dependent on basically our local receipts that come in. And so if it is a range between, the increase can be a range between 0 and 3%. But for the last 4 or 5 years, it's been 3% because our local revenues, and it's not the tax rate, but it's the local receipts have come in very strong.
Yeah.
So, and then in the expenses, you'll see those are, the inflationary cost percentage is about 3 or 4%. But understanding nationally or even, outside of Chatham, that inflation is a factor, but that doesn't fall into our formula for our cost of living increases.
Yeah, I guess I'm talking more of the overall budget versus the overall national economy and the difference between what they're projecting as an overall inflation rate versus our budget and the overall budget increase, not just the salaries or cost of living, is over 5%.
Yeah, and the majority of our budget is based on wage and salaries. So with the new compensation plan, there's more steps to the plan. So
Right.
employees have the opportunity for growth beyond just the annual increase. Up until 2022, some employees had been maxed out for more than 10 years. And so that's one of the reasons Carrie and I were specifically trying to be very cautious and conservative, knowing that the salary and wage impact to the budget is a component that's pretty high, but also looking at the inflationary cost to providing, to buying the same type of items, there's a premium to that. So it's 5% greater than the fiscal year 2024 budget, but there's not a lot in this budget other than salaries and some expenses, and we'll get into the detail. We have some large expenses that are in the operating budget because we're at the last year of our contract operations agreement with Weston and Sampson for water and sewer operations. So
Right.
those, we used to call them budget busters, they're budget drivers, and Carrie will get a little bit more into that today, too.
Okay, thank you.
Jill, could you just give us a quick update on the status of the collective bargaining agreements? Has conversations begun? Have negotiations gotten underway, or?
Yes, so we've just concluded negotiations with one unit. We're in active negotiations with 2 units. The 2 remaining units, because we have 5, that's the greatest number of employees. That's what we're hoping to begin very soon, in anticipation that we would have a warrant article placeholder. So any fiscal items that can't be sustained in the FY25 operating budget, which we typically keep it very separate so that it gets presented to town meeting. And I can go into more detail as we get closer. It's probably a February or March discussion that we'll have with
Okay,
FinCom.
terrific, thank you.
Oh, this slide is, sorry, that's Jill.
All right. So this information is also in your budget book. So when we had our preliminary discussions with the department heads, we asked them to look at workload and services in anticipation that there wouldn't be any new staffing proposed, so that when we did, Carrie and I did meet with them, including one for the accounting office, there's still some need, and mostly because of the transition from some of the longer-serving employees, especially with our leadership team. We've had, as you know, Alex Halala, Finance Director, is retired. Dr. Bob Duncanson, our Director of Natural Resources, retired. We had Tom Temple retire in late 2022 as our DPW Director, and then an upcoming retirement in our Harbor Masters division with our Harbor Master, Stuart Smith. So at this point, I'm not ready to support any of the positions that, through our discussions, I felt it was, I wanted to be transparent and at least show the Select Board and the Finance Committee of positions that were put forward by the departments. But the departments in individual discussions, if none of these went through, they were fine with that. They were looking as an organization rather than putting or pitting one department against another. So we're all in it. So what we had discussed, and part of some discussions came through last year's budget review with the Select Board, is in accounting. So accounting doesn't have any administrative support, and so we were thinking about, this is before Carrie, so you hold me to this one, looking at a budget analyst position to help make sure that there is, regular updates and help the departments review their, what we call the management reports. And then part of the year serve as the sticker office administrator. This position, as you know, is just down here across the hall, and it's a seasonal position, but we're finding ways to try to make the sticker process a little smoother, and if we can have people who are second homeowners able to apply for their stickers for both the transfer station and the beaches earlier in the year, so that they don't have to wait till they come here to actually pick it up and wait in line. So there was some of that streamlining we were looking at, and also looking just to do general administrative staff through the accounting division, including payroll. Public safety was somewhat of a soft request from Chief Anderson. We currently have 3 vacancies right now. This, he felt, would get us to full employment through the PD, but more importantly for him was the timing of the academies. And so even if we hired someone, say, on July 1st, there's no guarantee that they would actually get into an academy until maybe September or January. So it's almost like a 9-month timeline for someone actually getting hired, finishing academy, and actually going through their training. We put forward the Natural Resources Harbor Master Division position of a boat operator, marine mechanic. I felt at this time that with a new transition coming at the end of March, that at this time I didn't feel comfortable presenting this position. Still have some questions about it, but again, this gives me some time to work with the department head, Greg Berman. And then the last one is a very, very tentative hold, because we actually don't think this is going to come through. This is a change to the building code that would require a local inspector to do all the short-term rental inspections. So we've actually just put out an offer for someone to be the short-term rental administrator. That position was funded in FY24, the annual town meeting 2023. But that person doesn't have those licenses and certifications. I don't really think this is going to go through. There's a lot of other towns that are objecting to this, but in the event it does, community development put it forward And I think that the person who will hire for that position is more than capable of getting their certifications to be a local inspector if need be. So, so that's it. It's more than 288,000, almost 289,000. And usually I get in front of you and I make a really hard push. At this time, you know, with looking at revenues, closing out FY '23, I just kind of want to pause on the new staffing that may be requested, but I did put them in order of my priorities should we decide to move forward with that recommendation.
Joanne, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And with your bottom line there, 288,000, we have to also add the benefits, and we're just hearing that the cost of the benefits are increasing too.
Yes, so this is not programmed into the budget. This is the 289,000, or what we usually budget for health insurance for any new employee. That is not included in this
Right.
version of the FY25 budget.
Okay, but it's worth considering
Yes.
when you're thinking
absolutely.
about, thank you.
Thank you.
So to be clear, Jill, the 288 is not a benefited figure? That's just a gross
That's just a gross.
wages?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
gross wages.
And the community development change you referenced, is that a state level
Yes.
mandate?
Yes,
Okay.
a Massachusetts building code.
All right, very good, thank you.
Yep. Okay, this is you.
2025 operational increases, budget drivers. So these are some of the increases that I have seen to the expense lines, not including the salaries. Town manager has a 16,800 increase for costs of printing, postage, meetings, and office supplies. Human Resources has an increase of $6,000 for physicals, boots, which are contractual, meetings, and professional and consulting costs. Legal, $10,000, and assessing $13,000 for the cost of a revaluation, their contract. Information technology has increased $60,000 for the purchase of services and capital outlay. Town elections, in 2025, it's an election year. So you have state primary and you also have vote by mail. So there's an increase to that department. Public safety, police department has increased $5,600 for uniforms, meetings, dues, travel, and purchase of services.
Carrie, I'm sorry,
Yep.
before you jump off that page, do we know, for example, what the purchase of services is for IT? What's embedded in that?
So I have, hold on one
Broadly.
second. So the IT department pays for the annual maintenance of contracts for, I think it's all departments, for all the services. So Office 365 has increased 8%. Adobe licensing increased 5%. Cisco maintenance has increased 5%. Vadar Sage, which is our accounting software and payrolls that we use, has increased 5%. And then also, we have a new software for debt book.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
You're welcome. That was on the slide. The Public Safety Fire Department increased $23,000 for meetings, dues and travel, trainings, purchase of services, medical supplies, and vehicle maintenance. Community Development increased $13,000 for the cost of services and publications and subscriptions. DPW Transfer Station increased $30,000 for their contract services with CMAS. And DPW Sewer has increased $126 for their contracted services. That's the Weston and Sampson that Jill was talking about just a minute ago. DPW Cemetery has increased $20,000 for buildings, grounds, and maintenance. DPW Parks and Grounds has increased $18,000 for buildings, grounds, and maintenance and vehicle maintenance. The insurance line has increased $127,000. It's around 15, the overall insurance line is 15% increased. And that's the information I received from the insurance company, that it was going to be between 10 and 15% increases for 2025. So right now I have it in for 15%, just to be on the safe side. And employee benefits, $383,430, and that's with projected increased cost for the health insurance at 10%. This is the 2025 educational assessments that we've received so far. So the first one is the Monomoy Regional School District at $10,461,947. I know you have a question about this, the Chatham Elementary School.
We'll bring everybody else into the tent. I expressed to Carrie my curiosity about why the Chatham Elementary School figure went up from 700,000+ to 1.1 million, roughly.
So I did get an answer back from the business officer at the school this morning, and he said he can get into more detail of everything when he comes to present, but he did say that there was a proposed moving a pre-K section back to Chatham Elementary School. There hasn't been one there for the last couple of years, so that includes a half-time teacher and 2 half-time instructional assistants and supplies and specialist services. So that's why that increased. And then they're assuming a 10% increased cost for health insurance. Number of people, I guess, that work at Chatham Elementary School have just gone on their health insurance plan as well. So it's increased by 4 people. And they're currently in negotiations with their teachers. So they're just making, their proposals for what they think their negotiation costs are going to be as well. And the cost of their facilities maintenance and insurance continues to increase.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
You're welcome. The Cape Cod Tech Regional High School, that was the assessment that I just received. I think I got it at the end of last week. That also includes the debt service with an increase of 7 Chatham students. The Monomoy Regional School District, they present to the Select Board on February 27th. The proposed budget has a 5.93% increase, and the Chatham assessment proposed increase is 7.74, with possible borrowing to replace the siding and trim on the middle school building. That's just another proposal, but we haven't gotten any information on that yet. And the school committee vote on March 14th, 2024. Yep.
Sorry, Tracy, go ahead.
Why does, if the proposed budget apologies. If the proposed budget has a 5.9% increase, why is the Chatham assessment increase higher?
So that's looking at the overall budget, and then the assessment is just the assessment from, I believe it's from last year, right?
Yeah, so the overall budget has like Chapter 90 state aid offsets, and so they take in all the revenue offsets or state aid, and then they split the assessment based, I don't have it in front of me, I think we're at 23% percentage and.
Oh, I have the enrollment?
Yeah, what's the enrollment?
23.16 for 2025 versus 23.44 for 24.
So it went down a little bit for us for our portion of the total assessment, but that's how it's split between Harwich and Chatham. And we did some changes to the regional agreement last year, specifically to call out for each town to pay for its own elementary school, but there's no proposed changes to the assessment or the regional agreement at this time. So it's kind of like our budget, how there could be the total amount of budget might increase by 5.06, but you might see community development increase by 14%. It's just whatever that breakdown split is of that percentage of the total budget.
Jill, would you be willing to handicap the likelihood that, Harwich will come back to us in the next year or two, regarding the funding equation in the regional agreement?
Well, if I was a betting person, I think we expect something every year, whether it comes to fruition. We have not been presented with any request for an assessment change. And I know that there's been some coverage in the paper about the Harwich Select Board, but nothing's formal has come to us. And even in our internal meetings that Carrie and I have with the superintendent and the Harwich Town Administrator and their finance director, again, nothing formal has come to us yet.
Okay, fingers crossed. Thank you.
So this graph just shows what the assessments over the past 5 years have been for Monomoy Regional School District. Sorry, my mouse. The Cape Cod Regional Technical High School, the preliminary assessment for 2025 is 575, 479. The final vote for the school committee is on February 29th, 2024. Again, they've had an increase of 7 students, so the assessment, it equates to like a 53% increase to in their assessment. And they're still waiting on their health insurance vote and Chapter 70 figures. Actually, I think they've gotten their Chapter 70 figures, haven't they? That's from the state government, so that's why we got the new figure. I was just left in from the last presentation. And this slide right here is a graph of the Cape Cod Tech's assessments for the past 5 years. This is the water department budget. So in 2025, we're looking at $4.3 million, which would be a 12.41% increase from 2024. The salaries are at $273,000. Expenses at $2.2 million, including contracted services. The indirect costs are $329,930 paid to the general fund, and their debt service is $1.5, almost $1.6 million. There's been a large increase in debt service for the water treatment plant, Mill Pond Wells. So we're going to keep monitoring the revenue rates so the water stays self-supporting. I did list the indirect costs on here, so, because I know that's another question. So the indirect costs include uses for like town workers, like accounting and treasurer's office that they use. They have salaries in there, so also the health insurance that the general fund pays for. The water department is supposed to be self-supporting, so they are paying their costs for their health insurance, and they're also paying their costs for Medicare that the town general fund pays, and their portion of, for Barnstable County pension for their employees.
Okay, so it's essentially the indirect costs are a reimbursement to the town of Chatham for allocated costs.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank
Yep.
you.
We budget them and pay them out of the general fund, and then we get reimbursed for their employees based, from the water department.
It's our employees who, like the DPW director and the billing staff, but we have the contract ops who actually are the ones that manage the water system itself.
You're welcome. The 2025 capital plan, this is going over the amounts between 10 and 250,000. The total amounts of requests we received was $10.49 million in items that cost between 10 and 250,000. We are recommending 2.37 million using free cash. And I'm sorry. We're recommending $2.3 million in capital items, and we're using free cash in the amount of $2.1 million. And the additional will come from other available funds. So this kind of is a breakdown of the 2025 capital budget comparable to 2024. So the requests by the departments are listed in the middle graph for 10.4 million, and then we have the proposed amounts that we agreed to.
So Jill, typically, a figure of 5.4% or whatever the preceding page figure was, kind of the funded ratio, 5.4%.
5.4% of the
Tends to
operating.
be, I mean, that's typically a lower figure than what we typically see. Were in your collective minds, the projects not, the requests not justified, or are we sort of exercising a higher degree of fiscal constraint right now, or what's the genesis of that 5.4 versus something else?
I can answer it. So we only received we actually haven't actually received our certification yet for our free cash, but we're estimating 2.5 million. So we only had around that money to play with, and with leaving some on the board, that's why, just in case we needed some extra money. So that's why we went with that figure.
Okay.
We probably could have approved more project if we had more money, but that's.
You'll soon learn at the debate between the finance department and the finance committee on
Right.
the nature of free cash.
Yeah.
We're fully aware of that.
Yeah, no, I'm
Slightly
aware.
different points of view.
I'm aware.
All right.
When Carrie and I met with the departments, though, I mean, you've only been here since November, so that's all we've been doing. I have to give credit to the departments. They really delve through their capital plans, what's a priority, what we can push out. They identified additional funding sources of articles, like older articles that we could potentially close out in order to fund the requests. This budget for us, we used a lot of fiscal constraint moving forward because we're getting to that point as we see the revenue starting to level out from the local receipts. I'm getting back, well, I shouldn't say getting back. I remain in my cautious mode, but we really wanted to be conservative for this budget so that there weren't any surprises or that we could have the funding available if we do have to, fund, one of the surprises or unexpected items. So to give credit to the departments, they've really done a great job of really narrowing their absolute priorities for this year and further planning it out for the next 5 years.
That's terrific. Thank you.
Yep. Oh, I already went over this slide. So this slide is going over where we're using our funds from. So for the 2.3 million, so we're using 2.1 from free cash. We're using 80,000 from the Waterways Improvement Fund, 25 from cemetery sale of lots, 24 from the PEG Access Fund, and then 88,000 from prior articles. No, it's fine. So these are articles, they're still pending review from Select Board and FinCom. But these were actually voted from the CPC on January 22nd. So we have the admin budget at 15,000. The 480 is actually fund appropriations. That's an article for the 10% of recreation, open space, and historic, I think, those are all of them. So that's not actually money going out, it's actually money coming into the town. I just wanted to make that clear. So the projects are the Housing Trust at 750. There's a project from Forward at the Rock. This is actually their second year. They came to the town in 2019. So they're giving them 75,000. And then there's another affordable housing, Spring Rock by the Village for 100,000. And then you have the Coast Guard Boathouse. That's another one that came forward last year. They're asking for an additional 350,000. I think originally their ask was for 700,000, but CPC agreed to give them 350 last year and 350 this year. The press box at 100,000. That's for the Monomoy Regional School District. And then another one that passed was the Chatham Little League Field at 136. So we'll have a meeting with them, and they'll be here to present their articles. Yep.
Barbara, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Carrie, where are those two affordable housing units? What towns are they in?
So Brewster and Dennis.
Thank you.
And I believe the Brewster one is Spring Rock Village, and the Forward at the Rock is Dennis.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Did we not get any requests from Orleans, a project they're doing on West Road? I know we've contributed to them before, but now that they're underway, nothing came in from them as far as you know?
No, I didn't see anything come in for that.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. So these are our other articles that are pending review. Like Jill was talking about earlier, we have the dredging for 400,000, the childcare voucher at 125, OPEB funding at 150, potentially funding the stabilization account for 150. Roll-off truck, that was one, so that's one that was actually above the 250, the transfer station roll-off truck, so that's 361. And then there's 2 airport capital requests on there. And other funding for the sewer capital is 1.7 million, and that would be a transfer from the wastewater capital stabilization fund that was created. So we would use that money for that. I also have the balance of the stabilization here, if you want to know what's in it currently, which is,
I was just gonna to ask that, and also, while you're explaining it, how we can access that. Is that considered our rainy day fund? And what do we need to do to access it?
so we currently have $2,267,970 in our stabilization fund. I guess you can call it a rainy day fund. I like to call it a fund, like if something goes really bad, to use it. But you have to go to town meeting and vote to use the funds from stabilization. And it has to be I believe it's a majority vote now, because it used to be 2/3, but I think it's a majority now. They just changed that.
And that's for both stabilization, the wastewater capital stabilization as well as the general stabilization fund.
Excuse me, before.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want me to go back? No, that's fine.
Wait, there's more. On your wastewater stabilization fund.
Yep.
Can you explain to our listeners what that's made up of and how we fund that?
That is a very good question.
I just don't have it in front of me. So that is funded through the town's intermunicipal agreement with the town of Chatham and the town of Harwich. And so this is for them to use a small percentage of our wastewater pollution control facility. And that right now is targeted for East Harwich. So there are milestone contributions to the town. The first one was, I think, 2.65 million. And then 1.5 million at a certain milestone, which we got, I think it was in January 2023. The next 1.5 milestone is due to us at Connections, and we're thinking that's going to be June of 2024, and that will leave that added up right, 1.5 million milestone. They all have to be provided to the town within 7 years of the initial approval of the IMA, and I just don't have it in front of me. I think it was 2018 or so.
And some of that is the gateway expenses for them, for them to pay for some of our capital expense for the sewer system, and the other is for flow. Am I right?
Flow, and then the portion of the operating and maintenance costs too also flow into that wastewater stabilization fund too. So none of this is going into the general fund like it used to, where it would close out to free cash.
Right.
Once the fund is certified, then we can at the end of the year, do transfers out. So that's where the sewer capital, some of those items, like the lining of the 8-inch, it's called AC force main, it's asbestos cement force main pipe. That's downtown, the older system between Chatham Bars Ave and Library Lane. And the rehab of the septic building at Lakeside, I believe that's part of the wastewater pollution control facility. It's the access point where the waste actually comes in to the facility that needs some repairs, and then some additional repairs to the original sewer system elsewhere downtown.
We will be receiving the flow money for this fund for as long as Harwich is hooked up to our sewer system, right? That's a
Essentially,
non-ending
yes, it's
source of revenue.
as long as they're hooked up, there's the operating, we call it operating and maintenance O&M costs. Yes, that will be contributed to the stabilization fund, the wastewater stabilization fund.
Thank you.
Sorry, I had it, oh, here it is. Yeah, so it's a total of $6,765,000. And we had done an amendment so that all of the funding, we extended it 2 years, and that was done 2 years ago. So by June of 2026, we should have received that total amount. So I had said June of 2024, it's actually June of 2026 for the full 765 plus the operating and maintenance costs for the flow that is coming from East Harwich to the town's facility. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry.
These are very pending, but again, we look at what the potential articles are as we look at our total financial management plan. The first one, the transfer station borrowing authorization, this is for phase 1, but priority 2. This is essentially the recycling area. You might have seen at the select board meeting on the 16th and prior to that, where the bids for phase 2 priority 1, which is where the employees are in the big blue building, those came in much higher than estimates. And so the select board agreed to authorize me to award the contract for that phase 1 and then seek additional funding, for the phase 2 priority 1 and seek additional funding for the phase 1 priority 2. So the phase 2 is vertical and the phase 1 is basically horizontal development that we call, so it's more site-specific and so forth. So potentially, we think it's going to be $2 million.
Joanne, please.
The total cost of the transfer station project?
Oh, I don't know if I have it with me. I want to say it's over $5 million, but I'll give it to Carrie and she can present it on Thursday for you.
Okay, I think that's important.
Yep, definitely.
What did we project that it would cost us?
I thought
Do
it
you
was
have it?
like, no.
Let me get back to you on that.
Sure.
And
Thank you.
And we'll get that.
So
as-
you want the total amount that we appropriated originally?
Yeah, I can give you the staff report.
Yeah, what we were expected for this to cost us altogether versus what we projected originally.
Okay.
We have that. That's something we had to present to the select board
Okay.
as well. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for phase 2, priority 1, we have enough funds that have been approved and we're moving forward with that?
Yes, at the last town meeting, the debt exclusion vote was approved, and as well as the ATM article. But as we just said, it only had enough funding for one phase, which is phase 2, priority 1.
But town meeting thought it was for all the phases.
And so did we, yes.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
And Jill, can you identify, or Carrie, which phase/priority the facilities are for the employees?
It's phase 2, priority 1, and those are the contracts that I've just approved.
Okay. All right, so we will be taking care of the employees' working
Yes.
conditions?
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
The next one is, and again, when we have, it's a team of Rob Faley, our DPW director, as well as Greg Berman, our director of natural resources. We don't have a project authorization through the Clean Water Protection Act. So as we gear up for that, that's where we would come to the town meeting to ask for a debt exclusion vote. At this point, they are looking at, still with the wastewater phase 1, I think we're at phase 1D2, some additional continuation of the design and engineering for $250,000. So this one and the other one has not been vetted yet with the select board. It was something for us to put together in order to issue this proposed budget. So that's still to be continued. And then the waterfront bond projects, if you look in both the transmittal and the budget book, there's a status on where we are with the waterfront bond projects. We'll have a separate presentation on that. That was 11 million that was voted in 2017. And in meeting with the team, it looks like we will deplete that possibly before the 90 Bridge Street project is completed, and we still have some other high priority items such as Writers Cove. So if you ask me any questions right now, I didn't bring all of my materials, but certainly in the budget book shows where we are with the waterfront bond, and we'll have the team of Rob and Greg here to talk about that, and I think that's coming up next Tuesday, at least for DPW. So we're putting it out there just in case. I don't know where we'll land with the last item for the waterfront bond projects, but I know staff has identified that as a priority.
But we did at last get the answer to the question we've been asking for a couple of years, which is what happens when we spend all the money and we haven't finished the projects? So it looks as though, Barbara, I think to your recurring question, we'll be seeking replenishment of the fund.
Wishful thinking, I guess, but don't we ever, I mean, I get you have to put out a request for proposal, but don't we ever say, this is the amount of our budget? Is anybody out there willing to do this project for this amount of money that we've approved?
I wish I could say yes, but when the projects are designed and there's a project estimate to it, everything's in the public menu. So it's a matter of getting the responses back like we did. So we issued the bids for the transfer station, both phases together. And when the bids came in, that's when we prioritized the employee area because there wasn't enough funding. And if there's not enough funding, we can reject the bid that comes in. So don't want to tap dance here because that's not me at all. But right now in the waterfront bond projects, we're looking at what's available, and what we're also doing is, I guess you would say, planning out the WOOF, the waterway user fees. We're getting in about $1 million or so a year, and having those funds offset those projects too. So we're looking at a way to offset the bond and the tax rate in order to get these priority projects from 2017 completed.
The town's net OPEB liability as of June 30th, 2023 is $14,675,790, a decrease of $2,458,551 from 2023. As the plan's fiduciary position increased by 1.143, and our total OPEB liability decreased by $1,314,271,000. The reallocation of 1.5% of the land bank surtax raised $510,000 in revenue in FY 2023 for the OPEB trust fund and is on pace to raise approximately $600,000 in 2024. For FY '25, we are recommending that the $150,000 from the overlay surplus be transferred to the stabilization. Well, we're also doing both of those, so.
Yeah, we traditionally
And OPEB.
Yeah.
As it has been done in the past. So I think originally you guys do $150 to OPEB every year, but this year we're gonna do $150 to stabilization and $150 to OPEB. This is in hope to keep the town in compliance with our financial policies.
I gave a talk to the Chatham Men's Club a month or so ago about the mysteries of the Finance Committee, and noted kind of where we were relative to the OPEB funding and approximately 32% funded ratio. And I took the time to go onto the state website, and believe it or not, it's 360 communities in the state. We're probably top 50, certainly top 75, with a funded ratio of 30 plus or minus percent. So a far cry from where we were a couple of years ago, and I think a good trajectory. we originally talked about trying to have this thing all wrapped up by, in what, 2024, 2025, but clearly we're not gonna get there, but we've made some real strides in getting this obligation nailed down, or at least boxed in to some degree.
Yep. Yep.
Barbara, please.
Mr. Chair, this might be better for you. Where are those funds invested?
Good idea. Good question.
Well, I mean, you can answer that at any number of levels. Technically, they're with excuse me, it's my singing voice. Bartholomew and Company, which manages a number of funds on behalf of the town. Specifically, we've got an investment paradigm of, I think it's 65% equities, 10% real assets, and 25% bonds, just out of memory. But we've got a laddered portfolio of bonds and equities. We took a hit, as everybody did a couple years ago. We didn't make any moves because our intent with this funding is long-term. It's a long-term obligation. We'll sort of match it with long-term match funding. And it's recovered pretty well, and that's kind of what we're doing. We're sort of taking a long-term fiduciary view of the obligation.
Do we have any idea what the percentage return for this past calendar year was?
I can get that from Sharon Brown easily. So stay tuned. I'll provide it to the committee.
Were you happy with it?
Happy enough. Happy enough. I mean, it's kind of an interesting market. I mean, depends where you are. If you're, tech heavy, NASDAQ heavy, you're really happy. If you're in S&P, I mean, 14+%, still pretty solid. I don't want to hazard a guess, but I'll get you the numbers. Joanne, did you have a question?
That was my question.
Okay, more to come.
What interest we're drawing on that and the stabilization fund, those accounts?
Anything from Carrie or Jill on that topic?
For,
No,
Oh,
next time we will.
Next question. All right, thank you.
Did you get that stabilization? No. Okay. In the stabilization, what we're getting is an interest rate too. Okay.
yep, that's fine.
We're very close to the end of the presentation. So this is somewhat breaking news. The Select Board had its second of 2 goal-setting sessions this past Saturday on the 27th and voted a vision statement as well as goals and objectives. And so this is the vision statement. I'll just read it for those who might not be able to see it at home. Chatham in 2030 will be a forward-looking, engaged, and inclusive community, a demographically diverse year-round citizens that maintains a unique integration of preservation of its pristine environment, promotion of a healthy economy, fiscally responsible and responsive leadership, and a welcoming environment for all to Chatham. This year, we did it a little different, having the board look forward to 2030, although it is the fiscal year 2025, calendar year 2024 goals. But a lot of our initiatives are multi-year initiatives. And so the select board members completed worksheets. We had a facilitated session in-house by our select board and town manager's assistant, Kathy Lewis, who is on a school committee in Mashpee, and she's very gifted in this. And we ended up here with consensus, so this was a unanimous vote. And then from here, the board developed gold buckets or pillars. And so in no particular order, I should say, they're all equally important. They've committed to year-round housing, educational excellence, foster a vibrant and sustainable local economy, environmental conservation, coastal resiliency and natural resources, water management, and respond effectively to the needs of a diverse, welcoming, and livable Chatham. So the objectives that follow these pillars or their buckets are very specific, and we'll have that available on the website tomorrow, and I believe the chair of the select board will read through it tonight. So this is just, it's breaking news, but it's pretty exciting. It's just a whole different way of looking at our goal-setting process.
That's terrific.
And then
For some reason, the icon for the local economy is a pig.
I think it's a piggy bank. There's a
Just
slot on
wondering.
top, but we can certainly look at
No,
others.
no offense intended, Tracy.
Yes. Sorry, I just went quickly through it. Okay, and then our last slide is just noting that the timeline for the review, the select board's goals and objectives, they just voted it. You through the FinCom through the bylaw presents preliminary recommendations. I have it on this slide as February 20th. If that's the date, that's great. If not, we can do something about that. And then the select board has to vote and transmit its budget to FinCom officially by March 1st of every year, and that's scheduled for February 27th. And then as you'll do the budget review of the departments, we're looking to get the warrant articles also before you for review so that we can try to compress the review and hopefully have it done by March 15th. This year, we have to get the warrant to the printer, I think it's March 20th. And the reason why it's that it takes so long for, once it's printed, for it to get to the post office. That seems to be the timeline. But we have to post it and have it in people's households 14 days before town meeting. And so town meeting, the warrant closes on the 19th by the select board. Town meeting, as you know, is the 13th. And then the annual town election will be on Thursday following town meeting.
So just a word on that schedule for the committee. The February 20 is the agreed date by which we need to get our recommendations back to the select board. I am going to be out next Thursday. I'm going to be out this Thursday and next Thursday. Next Thursday, I'm having surgery, so it's not clear what the kind of rebound rate for that is, whether I'm going to be online or otherwise. But I'm really going to need you guys, under Joanne's leadership as vice chair, to focus on that feedback. Because I'm going to be the guy who's going to sit up there and talk about all our great ideas and thoughts and reactions. So in my absence, I really need you guys to focus on those, especially so we can pull a meaningful report together for the benefit of the select board and town manager and Carrie. So, thank you.
Yeah, and the chair's worked with Carrie on future agendas to have which departments will be presenting. And like I said, I'm hopefully going to have warrant articles presented at that same time. The only glitch for us is whether the select board votes to place them on the warrant. And some of that might not be coming until mid-February or so. So we'll help you get your reviews in time for the recommendations in the warrant.
Okay, questions for Carrie and or Jill? Joanne?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just an observation. Striking difference in our emphasis this year from last year. I'm noting $5 million transfer station, waterfront, $10 to $11 million, and there's not been one mention of a senior center. And yet last year, we were constantly speaking about having enough money and the will to do something for the seniors. Is there anything happening?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. So right now, we're commencing a feasibility study of 193 Stony Hill. That's where the existing Center for Active Living is, to see, what could be done to have the functioning Center for Active Living that could carry us into the future, possibly at that location, or what deficiencies there are to not have it in that exact location. So it's a feasibility study, sort of like what we did when the town was considering the Chatham Health and Swim Club. So looking at existing conditions and with possible improvements. So that will be presented at public meetings. I think it will be done by March 15th. Certainly, they're starting to rev up right now, and the consultants have already walked through the building, noting some of the deficiencies. And the consultants that we're using, one of them, it's called Catalyst, and Catalyst Consulting are the ones that we're using for the Eldridge Garage Project and Visiting Center. And one of the principals was the person who did the original Chatham COA review back in, I think it was 2006 or 2007, when they were contemplating an addition for a adult daycare center. So this group is great for us because they already have working knowledge and can build upon what they had already done back in 2006. So we're hoping for a quick turnaround.
And to follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
What happened to the land on Main Street that we were, that was donated to us to be used for a senior center?
So the donation wasn't effectuated because the town meeting and the ballot or the election didn't produce a successful vote. So it remains in the property owner's ownership. I don't know what is planned for that. It looks the same as it's looked for the past few years. But
Okay.
it hasn't been redonated to the town.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Andy, please.
I'm just going to say it's also been notably quiet about PFAS.
Well, that's always on our minds. It's, but with the wells 10 and 11, that project, and that we haven't had any other detects in any of the other wells. So that's something we're actively monitoring. Yes, knock on wood.
Okay. Anything further? So in that case, let's go talk about our future meeting schedule. I again, just noted my pending absences. What Carrie and I have tried to focus on is what Alex and I would typically focus on, which is getting the biggest departments in the soonest. So we've got public safety coming in on Thursday, DPW, which are typically 1 and 2. Sometimes they switch, but usually 1 and 2. DPW is going to be in next week, followed by natural resources. Natural resources is typically number 5 at $2+ million, but we'll at least we can get them in. And then Carrie and I will continue to develop the forward calendar so she confirms availability for various parties. So more to come on that. Wanted to have a brief conversation about minutes. We have, and I think Ann's on, we have a set of, I think, 5 or 7 minutes that we need to approve now that we're back again in meeting. It has come to my attention, courtesy of Ann, and I verified this with the moderator, that under Massachusetts general law, a committee can enable a chair to approve minutes. So the question is whether you guys want to keep sort of doing it as we've done it since, I assume, the chairmanship, or do we want to take advantage of this little nugget and just leave it in the hands of essentially Carrie and myself, formally and technically me as chair, but typically, as historically was the case, working with Alex to correct any errors, and Ann usually does a pretty brilliant job on these things to begin with. So I open that up for any thoughts you guys may have on that. Joanne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, we get copies of them anyway, right?
Yeah.
And then we can, if there's anything unusual that we want to talk, we can just let you know so that you can do the questioning. I have no problem with you doing the work.
Barbara?
I think it's only kind of us to give you something to do whilst you recuperate.
Yeah, so altruistic. It's like declassifying documents. I'm just going to wave my hand over them and they'll be approved.
Exactly.
Any objections? All right, so I suppose we should have
A motion?
a motion and a second if we're earnest about this. Would anybody like to make a motion? I'm not going to do it.
We authorize the committee chair to sign off and approve minutes for the committee meetings.
Second.
Roll call. Tracy? Yes. Kristen?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes?
Tommy?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes,
So disappointed in you. I guess I will reluctantly vote yes. All right, so Anna, if you can hear me, you and I will kind of continue to distribute documents as historically we've had, but I'll wait a couple days. If I get some feedback, I'll dial it into you, Ann, and then we can, I'll wave my magic wand over the minutes and take care of that. Next on the agenda is Norma Avalar. It saddens me to announce that Norma has resigned from the Finance Committee. She has been a rock on this committee since June of 2007. I am certainly going to miss, as I'm sure we all will, her vast historic knowledge of the town, her unbridled willingness to speak her mind, and her love and affection for this town and this community. She's been a real asset to us, and she's gonna be dearly missed, I know by me, and I'm sure by all of you as well. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn unless Jill or Carrie, there's anything further from your quarter?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Second. Tommy?
Aye.
Barbara? Joanne?
Yes,
Yeah.
aye.
You can say yes.
Did you call my name?
I did call you.
Somewhere in there?
Somewhere in there.
Yes.
Thank you. Kristen?
Yes.
Tracy? Yes. Chair's in favor. Thank you. All right, guys.